Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. Today's guest is Jaccob Slavin, NHL All-Star defenseman for the Carolina Hurricanes. How are you, Jacob?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Man,
Excited to be here.
oh, this is exciting for us because we're actually located out of Erie, Colorado, and Erie, Colorado means something to you.
Yes, it does. Definitely. That's where I grew up, born and raised on Highway 7.
And that's been a little while. Highway 7's probably changed a lot since then.
Oh, it's changed big time. I was Highway 7 and County Line 7, and there was nothing there, no light right there turning on to Huron, nothing. And now there's King Supers. Every time I come back home to Colorado, there's more stuff. So it is growing fast.
Tell me what it's like to come back to Colorado, though, now that you've truly hit the big time.
Yeah, it's a blast. So I'm sure we'll get into this later, but my wife is from Illinois. I'm from Colorado, and so it's hard to choose one spot to go back to during the off season, and so we kind of just take time in both towns and visiting family. But no, coming back to Colorado is awesome. Obviously, all my family's there. Get to hang out with all my brothers again, and so it's always just fun coming back home. But it's crazy how much Erie's changed. Even just new schools popping up right next to the high school, thousands of homes popping up everywhere. It's every time we come back, it's more crowded. So Erie's definitely growing.
Do you have street cred with your family? I mean, you're in the NHL, man.
No, they don't. They don't care about that. They still give me a hard time, and they know what I'm like off the ice. So they're like, "How is he in the NHL?"
Of course, that's what siblings do, man.
Yeah,
Well, and you're not a small guy, 6'3".
yeah.
On skates, what's that?
6'5", probably 6'5" on skates, but everyone else is this taller on skates too, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't help me out that much.
But you know what? You said something in an interview that I think is really important, and it's kind of where we want to lead off. You said that in another segment that I watched, there's guys 5'5" up to 6'9", I think is what you'd said.
Yep, yeah, no, there's guys all sizes. They the game is much different than 10, 15 years ago when pretty much everyone was really big and it was a lot more physical, but now the game's all about speed, all about skill. Physicality is still definitely a part of it, but it's not one of the main points in the game anymore. And so there's so many different players out there with skill sets that are so unbelievable. But yeah, it's size doesn't really matter that much in today's game.
Which is absolutely awesome because I want to open this segment up. You know, when we do these things called Truth Talks podcast, we do those so that somebody either learns something, is inspired, sees the perseverance, and so on and so forth. You're 26 years old, multi-millionaire, and I don't want to embarrass you, but you are. That's the way it is. I researched it, and everybody can Google it. This is one of these shows that we love to do. Producer Chad and I, we both are involved with Erie High School. My daughter's a cheerleader there. His kid's a football player there, and we hope that all these kids watch this show because we know that this wasn't just given to you. You had to work for it. So I want to talk about that first because you have such an amazing story at such a young age, and I want to talk about. Tell us what it was like from growing up as a youth to now being in the NHL.
It's a fun story. It's a fun path. Obviously, born and raised in Erie, and so I have four siblings, two older, two younger, and hockey was our family sport. My brother was playing roller hockey, saw the movie The Mighty Ducks, and wanted to try ice hockey. I think he was maybe 5, 6 years old, and so got into ice hockey. Then my sister's playing, and so from the time I was born, I was always at the rink. And from 18 months, I had skates on to being on a team when I was 2 years old, and then just always at the rink. Then my little brother was born. He's 5 years younger than me, so he was always at the rink. And then our youngest brother's 10 years younger than me, and he's actually he's a sophomore at Erie High School this year as well. And so just hockey was just we were always at the rink, and so just even at home though, we brought it home with us too because we were always playing mini hockey sticks in the upstairs in the rooms, up downstairs in the basement. It was always a competition. Everything we did, from whether it was sports to basketball to fighting for the biggest cookie that mom made that night, it was always a competition. And so just kind of lived and breathed that growing up. And then obviously I had a lot of great coaches, played Highland Hills Jaguars for a while, and then went to play for the Colorado Thunderbirds up until I was a junior in high school, and then I left after that to go to Chicago to play junior hockey.
Is there anybody during that transition, you know, 'cause I played, college athletics, there's always that one coach that you just, you know, I always like to give a shout out to. Maybe there's a whole bunch of people. We know there's a ton of support to get to where you're at. Is there any one person, though, that you would single out and say, "Man, that really changed my focus and changed my drive"?
Um, Not necessarily changed my focus, but just helped direct it. I had one coach growing up for years, and my dad actually helped coach with him a couple of years. But his name's Tyson Davis. He's the hockey director now at Highland Hills, and I mean, he coached me from the time I was on skates throughout the years up until I left Highland Hills, and so there's I was always playing. I was a goalie up until I was at the age of 10, and so I was playing player and goalie, and I would take up an extra roster spot because one game I would play goalie and the next game I would play player and the other goalie would suit up. And so um, he came to me one year and said, "Hey Jacob, you gotta pick a position. Like I can't have you taking up two roster spots anymore, blah blah blah." And so he looked at me, he's like, "What position do you want to play?" I was like, "I want to play forward." And he just looked at me and he said, "Hell no." He's like, "You do not." Yeah, he's like, "You do not get to play forward. You're either goalie or you're a defenseman. I'm not letting you play forward." And so just even a little direction right there with how, and so I ended up choosing defense, and it worked out. But yeah, so even just that little direction. But my dad used to coach me too, and until I want to say it was probably till close to about that age when he was on the bench with me and he was yelling at me, blah blah blah. And I turned around, I was just like, "Dad, please just shut up." And from that moment on, he never got on the bench with me again. Stopped coaching me, and that was his coaching history there. But yeah, so I had a lot of great coaches. Tyson's definitely one that sticks out in my mind though, as one of the better coaches I had growing up through Colorado.
That's awesome because, you know, one of the things that is always fun in these stories for me is when a guy actually makes it to the level you're at, which is the pinnacle of that thing. It's a feel good thing for the people that supported you and tried to get you and help you get to that process. And at True Talks, we'd run a podcast one time talking about sending the elevator down, and we kind of feel like this is one of those send the elevator down with you coming on our show and encouraging young kids that, you know, again, people are paying astronomical amounts of money to keep their kids on the ice and crazy hours of practice and all that stuff, but it was worth it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's awesome. My family is such a huge part of why I'm here right now, and just the competition. Going back to the competition, just always competing at home, always trying to make each other better, but at the end of the day, always wanting what's best for one another. And so that was a huge support system for me, huge encouragement system for me. But yeah, no, definitely worth it. And I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I'd have for younger, whether it's hockey players or other sports, is to diversify what you're doing. You don't have to, like, for me, it wasn't hockey all day, every day, all year round. I was playing hockey during the hockey season. I was playing baseball during the baseball season. I was playing golf during the summertime. So I was playing all these different sports, and I think that's another reason why I can be so good at hockey is because I played all these other sports. So I was able to have all these different abilities outside of just what is specific to hockey, whether that's hand-eye coordination that I got from baseball that I can translate over to hockey. And so I think diversifying what sports you're playing is also another huge part of just maturing as an athlete.
Oh man, thank you so much for saying that. You know, one of my good buddies is Steve Johnson. He played with the St. Louis Cardinals and then ended up coaching in college. And what he said was, he goes, "Man, I love these kids that play different sports throughout the year because when I get them, they're not burnt out." And I'm seeing a lot of that where, you know, these clubs, these young baseball players are playing 50, 60 games as, you know, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. And he says, by the time I get them, he goes, they're burnt out. They're like tired, you know? And so thank you for saying that because that's something that we've always talked about. And I think it's real important. Give me this transition to the NHL though. Tell us the story of how you got there.
All right, so let's see here. I played obviously AAA in Colorado, and then so my next step was junior hockey, and so I wasn't drafted in the USHL draft. That was the league that I played in. USHL is like the uh, top league in the United States for kids who are wanting to make the jump to college, and so that's kind of like the best of the best in the juniors, and wasn't drafted in that league. And then so the year after my draft, I was playing U16 AAA, and the Chicago Steel, who are in the USHL, contacted me and said, "Hey, we want to obtain your rights." And so I had to go up and play 10 games with them when I was 16 playing in that league. So it's pretty young to play in that league, but they wanted my rights, so they didn't have to worry about drafting me the next year, someone else taking me in a draft. And so I played the 10 games with them. And then the next year, so that was my junior year. So senior year of high school, I moved away from Colorado to play with the Chicago Steel, and played with them that season. And then that was also going to be the first summer I was eligible to be in the NHL draft. And so leading up to the draft, I had talked to maybe 4 or 5 teams, and going into the draft, my agent or family advisor at the time was like, "Yeah, there's a chance you could be drafted as high as the second round, or there's a chance you might not be drafted at all." So just kind of going into it with an open mind. And then I think it was June of 2012, sitting at home on the couch the day of the draft, and I'm sitting on the couch watching it on the TV. My mom's in the kitchen watching it on her iPad, and I just hear her scream. And then next thing I know, I see my name come across the screen or whatever. So it was a pretty cool feeling, but it was the Carolina Hurricanes. I didn't talk to the Carolina Hurricanes once leading up to the draft. So I'm like, all right, this is interesting. But I was like, okay, it is what it is. And so I run outside. My dad's on his lawnmower. I'm like, "Dad, guess what?" And he's like, "What?" I was like, "The Carolina Hurricanes just drafted me." He just gives me a thumbs up and he keeps mowing. I'm like, okay, perfect. Out of way. And okay, so and then fast forward a little bit, still not understanding why the Hurricanes drafted me. It was awesome. I went to their development camp. It was cool. And then after my second year in Chicago, so I went back for one more year to Chicago. Then I played 2 years at Colorado College. And after my sophomore season at CC, we were thinking I was going to sign with the Hurricanes right after season got over. But then we got into all the contract negotiations and talking with my agent. We didn't seem like it was going to be a good fit. And so we thought we'd try to get traded at the draft. And then up a month before the draft, Carolina came back with an offer that we're like, okay, that's perfect. Let's do it. So I signed with Carolina. And then that would have been the summer of 2015. And I got married in August of 2015. And a week later, me and my wife, we moved out to Carolina, and we've been out here since. So that's 5 years ago now. And we love it out here. It's awesome. But I know we'll get into this later, but just how God's sovereignty played out in all of that, with why did Carolina draft me? I didn't talk to them once, to getting traded, and then or possibly being traded, and then to signing with Carolina. So it was really cool, and just why God has us out here in Carolina is super cool. And just to look back on his faithfulness over these past 5 years, being out here in Carolina is something special and a huge part of our story and our testimony. But so yeah, it's been awesome.
Well, apparently you want to run my show, so I'm going to go ahead and let you do that. You know what? I was going to save that to the end, but you know what? That's why I loved this show. I could not wait to do this interview, because you're 26 years old. I mean, right, for the most part, man, 26-year-olds are really just trying to figure out life, and you seem so incredibly mature. Your story is incredibly powerful, and there's no doubt that faith played a role in that. And as I was telling you a little bit off camera, it just seems like so many of our podcasts go faith-based. Let's jump into it, man. Obviously, you were raised that way, I'm guessing.
Yes, yeah. So born and raised in a Christian home, community Christian school up on, I don't even think it's called a community Christian school anymore, but up on 120th and near Colorado is where CCS was. And so I was there from kindergarten to 8th grade, and then went to Erie High School. But up until I left for Chicago, my faith was very important to me, and I was saved, but I really relied on my parents' faith and just the family dynamic of what we had to kind of be my relationship with Christ. And so it wasn't a personal relationship at the time. It was more just, okay, I believe in Christ. I believe that he died for my sins, and I'm the good Christian boy at school, and that's what I was known as. And so it wasn't until I moved away from all that after my junior year at Erie to where my faith really became my own, and I was out on my own. I was living with a family. And I was in my coach's office in juniors one day, and he looked at me, and the assistant coach looked at me and said, "Hey, Jacob, like, what kind of faith do you have?" I was like, I'm a Christian. He's like, "No, like, how's your personal relationship with Jesus Christ?" And that really just kind of stuck with me. And we had an awesome chaplain there in Chicago that ran us through chapels once a week. And so that's where my faith really became my own, and my own personal relationship with Jesus, and really took off from there, and just made it who I am, why I play the game of hockey, and why I go through every day the way I do now. And so that's really the turning point in my walk with the Lord. And now being, what was that? That was almost 10 years ago now. And so just how the Lord has worked over these past 10 years in my life has been awesome, just to see again his sovereignty, his faithfulness, the purpose of why I have the platform that I do, the abilities in the game of hockey that I do, and the resources that I do. It's all for his glory. And so it's really cool to look and see just his faithfulness through it all.
Good for you, man. That I think that's what made me want this podcast so bad, is because this day and age, that message has got to be there, and we love delivering it, especially somebody who's that open for it. I got to ask you though, do you repent after every game? Like, because obviously you're there to crush these people, right? Before you.
If you watch my hockey game, I don't throw too many body checks.
You don't want them coming back. There's that payback, right?
Yeah, no, that's never been my physicality, has never been a huge part of my game. And so,
I have watched a lot of stuff as I was preparing for this podcast, and it always amazes me that eye-hand skill coordination. I mean, that is a pretty small puck, and the way you guys control it is just unbelievable to me. And I guess, that probably started at, what, 4 or 5, right?
yeah, I mean, I had a stick in my hands by the time I was 2 years old. And so, just growing up with that, it definitely helps, and it comes naturally, thankfully.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, going back to the different sports, like hitting a baseball coming at you really fast with a bat definitely helps out there on the ice if you have to knock a puck down out of the air. And so, going back to just that advice of playing different sports as well.
Yeah, no, I think that is an incredible message. Man, let's get to some fun stuff too. So you end up getting married. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yep. So, how I met my wife is a fun story, because it's typical for a millennial. I met her online, but it was a total God story again. I was playing in my second year in Chicago, and my wife's from Southern Illinois, so about 3.5 hours from where I was playing. And I was a bored junior hockey player, no school, nothing to do. I was just on Twitter one day, and I was scrolling through Twitter from tweet to tweet, from profile to profile, and I came across one of her tweets that talked about being on fire for the Lord. So I clicked on it. I was like, "Oh, that's a great tweet." Then I clicked on her profile, and I was like, reading through some tweets. I was like, "Man, this girl's genuine. She seems like she loves the Lord, blah, blah, blah." And then I went up to her picture, and I clicked on her picture. I was like, "Okay, yep, I'm sold. She's beautiful. She loves the Lord. I'll click the follow button." So I followed her, and then she didn't follow me back. And so I had to, I had to work at it a little bit. So whether it was a DM or tweeting at her, whatever it was. Eventually she followed me back, but we still weren't talking yet. And she tweeted out, and she denied this for the longest time, up until probably about a year, 2 years ago, that she said she didn't do this. But I scrolled all the way back through Twitter, and I found the tweet. She said, "Snapchat me, I'm bored." And she gave out her Snapchat. And so, me being a junior hockey player, I was bored out of my mind. I was going to take full advantage of that. And so I Snapchatted her. I'm not ashamed to admit this. I Snapchatted her a video of me lip singing to Taylor Swift, and she was sold. She was hooked at that moment. She's like, "Okay, this isn't a normal guy. It's like, he's a goofy guy, whatever." So we started talking after that, and then that was with about 3 weeks left to go in my season. So we talked and Skyped and everything for about 3 weeks, and then after my season ended, I drove down to where she's from, and I met her and her family, and we had a full day together, whatever. And then the next day I drove back to Colorado. And so we did long distance for a year and a half. And then my sophomore year at CC, she moved out there and lived with a family friend down near the Springs. And then after Christmas time, it didn't work out so well, so she moved in with my family, which is about an hour and a half from Colorado Springs. And we still were able to see each other quite a bit just over the weekends and stuff. And so did long overall. We were dating for about 2.5 years, and we got married, and yeah, so we've been married for 5 years now, and out here in Raleigh, and now we have a beautiful daughter, and it's so much fun.
I was just say, but that's not it. Now you have a child. Talk about this daughter.
Yeah, so our daughter's name is Emersyn, and she is, what is today the 12th? Yeah, so she's no, today's the 11th. So tomorrow's the 12th, so she'll be 19 months tomorrow, and she's so much fun. So our daughter's adopted, and she was born the day after game one of playoffs in 2019, and so I was in DC, and she was born in North Carolina, and so I had to go back and forth from DC back to North Carolina, back to DC, back to North Carolina for just through the whole process of her being born, and having to be there to sign adoption papers and getting released from the hospital. And so it was crazy and hectic, but it was awesome. And so we have a open relationship with her birth mom. She's awesome, and just the story of Emersyn and just God working through all of it is really beautiful. But no, she is so much fun.
I read an article on that. Someone had wrote about you. And you had made some statements that it was tough. It was a long journey. It was a long road. You needed some privacy during that time and all that, which is obviously explainable. But it sounded like it was a long journey.
Yeah. The adoption process in and of itself can be a long journey from the time we started, and ours was a quick case. And from the time we started the adoption process, going to our first informational seminar to the time Emersyn was born was close to about a year. And so we got through all our paperwork and everything really quick, and our interview process and getting home study approved and everything within 4 months. And then we were on the wait list for about 8 months. And so there were a lot of times through those 8 months where there were some cases that we were shown to that we thought we were going to be placed with the child or meshed with the child, and it ended up not happening. And just a lot of trusting in God's plan through all that time. And yeah, Emersyn was definitely the one that was meant for us. And yeah, it's a beautiful story just to look back on, and again, just see God's faithfulness through it all.
You know, it's kind of an interesting deal because as I was studying for the podcast and doing my research, I think it's important that all our listeners know that she is a person of color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's almost as if this whole God thing is coming around. We need healing when it revolves around different races right now in our country. And I think this is another way God's creeping in to help and heal up that necessary wound that's out there.
Yes, absolutely. And even just from a personal standpoint of just opening my wife and I's hearts and our eyes to the injustices that still go on to people of color in our nation. Like we knew racism still existed before Emersyn was born and before we were her parents, but we didn't realize the level that it was still around and still prevalent in our country. And so even just from a personal standpoint, just opening our eyes and our hearts to that has been tremendous in our growth in that, and just really becoming an ally to people of color and with everything that's going on. And so yeah, I think the one word that always comes to my mind is reconciliation when we start talking about this, and just being able to reconcile those relationships between people of color and just our nation, and just how broken we all are. And obviously it's never going to be perfect, but it can be much better. And so when I think of the term reconciliation, I just think being reconciled back to Christ, and he's the one that's truly going to be able to fix this, because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to a heart change in people and actually seeing it in their own hearts and seeing
I loved when I did read the article. It was talking about, you had mentioned that, you're just learning too. And I don't think everybody ever just automatically knows the answer when something happens. You're learning and you're trusting, you're just doing what you do. And that's just so powerful to me, man. It's just wickedly powerful that somebody, you get in this situation and you're like, hey, listen, I'm just still trying to learn. I'm trying to figure it all out myself. There's no real answers and all that. I just think that's such a motivational, positive message that you put out there. It's just, I don't know, man. I'm really digging you. When I got this through producer Chad, I'm like, I'm gonna dig this guy a lot, and it sure is happening.
Oh, well, yeah, no, it's definitely something where we're still learning. We're still we're always going to be growing in this way. And so um, there's a actually tomorrow I'm on a call with an NHL committee that's a player inclusion committee. So even within the game of hockey, they're trying to make the game of hockey more diverse and more inclusive to whether that's people of color, whether it's homosexuality, whatever it is. They're just trying to make the game of hockey more inclusive. And again, even going back to that, it comes back to a heart issue, and just within the individuals, it has to stem from a heart change and something for someone to be passionate about. They need their heart to be in it. And so um yeah, it's like you said, we're still learning more and more every day, and just trying to educate ourselves, and just be, again, I keep using this term ally, but just being in their corner, being in people of color's corner. And um it definitely makes us more motivated because we have a black daughter. But even just for more people, everyone else outside of Emersyn, we want now, we're in it now, we're passionate about it, and we just want to see that change happen.
And she's cute as a button, and I don't even know if I should tell you what you got looking at you in the future, but you know,
As cute as she has that much. The term Kylie and I were talking about it the other day. The term that we use is spunky, because she's a spunky little kid that has so much fun, so much personality, so much attitude. But it's cute when she does it. And so yeah, we have our hands full, but it's so much fun.
more kids in the future.
Possibly, yeah. My wife and I, we had to have a pretty big discussion before we adopted Emersyn, whether we were going to try to adopt first or try to have a kid biologically first. And that was something that God really worked on my heart with, because I wanted to have a kid biologically first. But so I think for our next kid, we'll do biological, or try at least, and if it happens, it happens. If not, that's okay. But that'll be at least another year away. So we're still working through that.
Man, you and your wife, just yeah, you guys are just amazing people, and you know what? I love a guy like you with that kind of faith, and I just always think about that young kid when you're at King Supers out here, and he comes up like, oh my God, that's Jaccob Slavin. I hope that you stand there for 1 second, look at that kid, touch his shoulder, sign something. Man, that's how heroes are made. That's how they're made. And you've got the platform for that, man. You've got a great platform, and I hope you use that to the greatest of your ability, because I believe you're blessed, my friend. I believe you're blessed, and
Yeah, God's definitely put me here for a reason. And like you said, the platform He's given me is huge, and just the impact I'm able to have. I have a lot of reach, and so I believe God's put me here to further His kingdom, to give Him all the glory while doing it, and hopefully change lives for the kingdom of God. But um, even if it's kids seeing the true joy that I have in my life, that's not from hockey, but that's from Jesus Christ being my Savior. Hopefully, that's the joy they see, because hockey's going to end one day. But the joy that I have in Christ, the fulfillment that I have in Christ, that's never going to end. And so that's what I cling on to, and hopefully other people see that.
I love it, man. We saw it, and that's why we wanted you on this show so bad. One last thing I want to kind of touch on is obviously things are different, man. What is it like playing a game when you would be used to playing in front of thousands of screaming fans? Has that been kind of a really interesting transition?
Yeah, it was. The bubble the bubble life was definitely interesting. The no fans, obviously fans make a huge difference, and so being there was strange, but the intensity of the games was still there. And once we got, I mean, it was playoff hockey, and so guys are still getting jacked up. There's still those rivalries there. The biggest thing that I feel like I noticed was the momentum swings weren't as drastic. Whereas when you're in with fans, and say we were in New York and we score a big goal, that changes the momentum of the game there, because the whole crowd goes silent, and now the whole momentum's on our side.
Yeah.
But in the bubble, it was, you score a big goal and you just hear the crowd noise at the sound producers were pumping in, whoo, and so it just wasn't the same. And so from that aspect, the momentum side, I think that was the biggest difference that I noticed. But from the intensity of the game, I mean, if you watch our first game against the Rangers in the qualifying round, the intensity is there. I mean, first shift in the game, Brady Shea absolutely destroys the guy, and the rest of the game is just so physical. It was playoff hockey, and so it was fun. Being in the bubble itself was different. I mean, we were just kind of trapped in our hotel and the rink and the practice rink. So it was fun though. It was a good time with the guys, and something that you hopefully you never have to experience again, but experience it once was fun.
Do you still pinch yourself when you're sitting on that bench in that locker room and you're putting on that NHL uniform?
A little bit. I think those little butterflies that you get as you're lacing up their skates are always going to be there. They still are, just waiting for the puck to drop, excitement, kind of nerves, and so it's fun. It's definitely still surreal. I think we were talking about this before the show, but just how I get paid to play a game that I love. I've been playing this game from the time I could walk to now, and so it doesn't seem like it's a job. So it's a blast. I mean, I love it.
I want to know something else. When you're home and you're at mom and dad's house, give those hugs, and it's like, I'm so proud of this guy. He worked his butt off, and he's there. I mean, are your parents really super proud?
Yeah, they're super proud. I was back in Colorado this year, right before Christmas time. We were playing a game, and this goes back to my dad being on the lawnmower the day I got drafted and just giving me a thumbs up of his excitement. We're in Colorado. We're down 1-0 with like 5 minutes to play in the third period. We score the game tying goal, and then with like 2 minutes left, I score the go ahead goal. So we're up 2-1, and there's a video after the game that points to my dad in the crowd, and he's just sitting there. And you see my mom screaming her head off. My dad's just, and so just no, but that's just a funny story. But no, they're super proud of my dad's like, oh, Jake, that's not the truth. I saw it going live, and I was fist bumping. I gave a big fist bump. I was so excited. I'm so proud of you, blah, blah, blah. Your mom, she can never see it live, so she was just watching the replay on the screen. That was her excitement. That's what they shot. Tell your media people I'm mad at them, blah, blah. And so they're just good. But no, they're super proud. They're really happy. But I mean, you hear, again, going back just who I am and how big of a role faith plays in my life. I mean, that was instilled by my dad, and so I was proud of my dad is of me as a hockey player. He's more proud of just the walk of life that I'm on. And he always, I mean, the biggest advice he always taught me growing up was, Jake, work as hard as you can, play as hard as you can, but remember, keep God first and stay humble. And so I still take that advice to the rink with me every day, and just in everyday life, that's how I try to live.
Man, I don't even know your parents, but I can tell you I love them. You can tell your parents if they don't know them. I love those people. It's just great, man. Great American values. Great story that you have, all the way from making it, giving back, what we call send the elevator down, which we got from another guest that we had, just to your faith and how that's all played a role. Now starting your family, still keeping that as a main focus. And I think now maybe with your own child, you can see your dad on that tractor and he's giving you the thumbs up. You always want your kids to do better than you. And I bet that hits home a little more now that you have your own.
Yes, it definitely does. It definitely does. Oh man, the things that, if Emersyn's personality doesn't change, that girl's she's gonna be a force to reckon with, and so in a good way, But
I'm gonna ask producer Chad to make sure we get a hold of you when she's 2, and then again when she's 3, and then again around 13 and 15, and then those will be even better podcasts. You'll have a whole different perspective, my friend.
Yes, I know. She starts gymnastics tomorrow, and so we'll see how that goes.
How cute is that? Jaccob Slavin, I tell you what, man, number one, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you giving us this time. We hope that this podcast spurs on so many young athletes to look you up, to research you, to follow in your footsteps. Your message is just unbelievably incredible, and I believe you're being blessed because of your faith and the way you walk that line. I think this is all the way it's supposed to be.
I appreciate having me. It was an awesome time.
Buddy, I cannot wait. We're going to keep following you. Producer Chad and I do this after every podcast. We obviously expect tickets when everything gets done.
Myself out to North Carolina. I'll get you some tickets.
All right. Well, you think we're kidding? We're not kidding, man. We'll be out there, and
we'll see you in 2022 when we can have fans.
Is that when they're saying?
I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, let's hope next year, man. Let's hope a vaccine, something. Let's hope next year.
I'm hoping 2021.
Yes, me too.
I have no idea how it's all going to play out, so we'll see.
Man, again, thank you for your time, Jacob. Just incredible podcast. I appreciate everything you've done for us.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me.
All right, thank you so much.